Hello. Lost of a soul. Lost of a soul is a divila in relation to the non-distant because the reaper cannot conclude the missing joint in relation to finale because the missing soul is an unknown. In relation to the missing soul, what does the experton will know that the Dibla is a father tree of motherhood in relation to the assumption of war. But in that way, the ordering system is just a prolongation of illumination. Illumination is based upon the transition of the Kori, because the transition of the Kori is the compliance of its own maturity. But in that way, if there is a conjunction of knowing how maturity this can go, this can also product the service producer to know how to, and to know how to based upon the pistasam of POV and nananan of PO5 and dodolo of TOT and ono is sala, because in that way, with the point of view, is the Makatan of blind people. So how can they control their walking when they cannot see? Hmm, interesting. But the point of view based upon blind people is that the illumination of brain will impulse the Vatlam of the vibrator, because when it vibrates, it may be smelly to conduct Phoenix later. Phoenix. So in that way, if the blind people are sam in relation to sam, the thinking of the plot in relation to knowing how to get around the lepida, because the lepidon is a dog, right? To help blind people to walk, don't they? Hmm. So in that way, when they were just born like that, what do blind people do? Self-flum, did they? Rainbow a deer, a female deer, love of the golden sun. Me a name I call myself, la da 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 la la la. The movie's called Music Hill or something with Hannah, which is Nathan, Hitler's mom. Hitler's mom? But anyway, based upon the training of wolves to understand the imagery of the brain, because blind people have brains, it's just the imagery is not visible, that's all. So in that time, when they know how to walk, they can walk. I've seen some anyway, with this stick going like this, you know. So in that way, when it goes like that, do they imagery what's around in some or outcome? So the in-sum and outcome is that who is where are and no ho of rose, a deer, a female deer, la, a Christmas tree or no. So in that way, with the blind people, the Kikshakanan of Nonotong is the Prakasha of the unicorn to understand Stockholm. So in the way of being blind, there's nothing we can do. We're just born like that. One day you will know why you become blind. Well, an accident is an accident, yes, but if you're born like that, nothing we can do. So in that way, the sanana of the case scenario in German is that the Luxation of the Labrador is helping to guide the blind people because the dogs can see, smell further away, and hear further away. No, next time you know how far the dog can hear. Catty is different. The catty has a clochon of hirnung, an intern of. So when they smell things, it's the differency. Of course they are. But in that way, the blind people are in between us, just different. No, Dufong, yes, Dufong. Because visually we can see, we know what it is, but when we eat, smell, we know what it is. Because our eyela is throshon of vision. But based upon the impairment, Dr. Sandra, based upon the impairment of imagery in relation to the brain, if we know some kind of signal of the vibration, we can actually guide the dogs. So having a purebred is nicer, but having a normal breed, it's fine. I'm purebred. So, but dogs do have a lot of, whatever you call it, sibling, or whatever you call it, little puppies. So in that way, if they do too much, it will get less and less and less, just like humans. Well, when we have a lot of babies, we get less and less and less. It doesn't change. It's just fine remount of Dadaron by Ripa. You have to ask him. So in so, the Ripa will actually padang, not predict, padang, how to guide the blind people and elope. Because in the guidance of elope, the dead people are just dead, but the blind people are dead because the imaging is dead. That's all. So in that way, Ganinam, the Tishanam of knowing that how to plongshong the enemy is just a blind things to know how to secta the Likshaton. Because in that way, if they do, they will guide the Nongha. Because the Garia will actually know how to develop the points of view as well as Desa. Because in that way, the fluxion of knowing how to, see, we are humans. We have eyes. We can see. Our brain works. How does it work, Dr. Sandra? Is normalaton. Because normalaton is that because we don't know the pre-ovong and the puntasan of the polokong of the POV plus. But the optimal optometrist can only has a little points because the guardian will build the relationship. Because in that way, when we are human, we don't have to think to look. We can tell. It's just our brain is awake and full. But the blind people based upon no eyes, the evolution of Vonton is VOB. Isn't that DVD coding? No, Codla by Codex. So in that way, when we were just born like that, or an accident, or anything, then when we do those things, being a sergeant and lieutenant, we'll get there. So in that time, when we code our HTML5, is the goddess of line in Makar. So in that way, when you want to code some produce, you writing and typing, no, writing. And when you're writing in your brain, does the imagery exist or it doesn't? I don't know. So but when you're under training and guide based upon mathematical, yes, magic school, your brain would think, because number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 21, 55, 66, 88, 94. So 43, 71, 63. So in that way, the confluence of how blind you are. Okay. So 55, 66, 21, 88, 74, 96, 41, 53, 21, 84, 77, 94. So when you do that talking, it would help you, but no imagery. It will be a slow distortion of the pressure of the CPU as well by the pins in relation to the keyboard. But in that way, one day, in your next life cycle, the future prediction is, with those touchscreens, you will know what it is. So in that way, with the imagery, like scroll, close, file, open, new. So in that way, when you know how to conclude your school, then you will influence the blind. Because the blinder you are, the confluent, there's no imagery. So since there is no imagery, you are the only one with those dots. That's all. So in that way, the darshan of knowing that the Vocon of voice over IP is an installation of non-da. See, in that way, when there is an installation of non-da, then the form will actually be sectional in relation to dava. In relation to dava, then we know how to blackshang the economy of lele, because the guidance will be mapping into the Blancan. And in that way, the Laka will actually be Dolashan into the Shishinu. Because in that way, to know how to imam, the imagery is based upon the Ishana. See? And in that way, when you know how to Sikuno, the Sishishan, then the Blakasa will actually be Sesame. And in that time, when you function the thinking pattern, then you will equalize the Malang. But in that way, you can also share the Lebanon in relation to the Dershon, per dogs in relation to Ga. And in relation to Ga, when you have this, you will pin the revision to support the data. So in that way, when you sapasan into the dimension of the galaxy, the Shokshanon of Nolo, well, you know, it doesn't really matter what movie you watch, and whatever you do, you're just born like that. But in your previous life, it was something else. Maybe you're Hitler's mother. I don't know. So in that way, when we confluent the color of the imagery, then we can perception the doctrine. Because web designer, didn't I help Brendan? So, web designer, sitting next to a blind sergeant, talking, CSS HTML blah 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 blah, padding, width, height, px da 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 da. So in that way, you know, you can have an external of lieutenant. So once they are used to it, one of them, whatever, male, female, once they are used to it, how can they know the imagery? So maybe they go home and they think about it and go, you know, padding 56 px, 32 px, 21 margin. And then on the next day or whenever you have a look at their drafts, no, Moncom of mocks. And in the up way, when a blind people can layer your CSS beautifully, then it's a second secretary for police navy. So in that way, if you can conflog how this works in relation to Sri Lanka and also the Afghanistanian, is that when we know how to shong the know-how, because the legane of the optometrist can guard the dogs in relation to thinking of thinking, and thinking of thinking in relation to your nozzle of smell, because Smeagol would smell, but when Smeagol will smell, will eclipse the imagery, or what imagery in the brown? Don't know. So my sister works at Eyes and Ears Hospital. Someone listen to music or? Oh, he's using a saw. Oh, see? So when you hear, when you hear things and stuff like that, you can have a certain amount of imagery. So when you go to the web designer, they'll give you some kind of cash. Not only, just some kind of cash to see what your layer is. Let's see at the moment of your CSS layer. So in relation to Polakakong and the Polishason, that the blind people will enjoy their art. So let's see. But in the kindergarten, you know what to do. You know, just drawing like ink, palm inks and stuff, and doing stuff like that, just to not train, but with imagery, so that when they get a bit older, they know what it is, but they can see. Yeah. So in that time, in the kindergarten, later I'll help the kindergarten. Did I used to go to kindergarten? I don't remember. I started in grade 3. Who's that girl that I played Barbie dolls with? Oh. Anyway, and there's Asia. The girls, they act like girls, but I had a weird imagery. It's just like deja vu. Sometimes I have deja vu. Oh, gross. But anyway, the compliance of our blind people. Oh no, I feel bad. That's why it happened in Springwell. But you know, maybe one day you can fix the eye. But I doubt it. I will. Really. Do you want to see why? How the brain works? Because I have an alien brain. You do? Oh. So, cache. So let's see how your layer works with cache. And try to do guide for dogs. I've seen them. They have like a bracelet, oh, like that, bracelet, like that, and they just hold the dogs like that, and the dog just walks them. But they can't go in the shop. So the dogs had to stay outside and the blind people had to go in the shop. But the blind people can't go in the shop because the shop's too busy. But if there's a, in the future, blind people, you have a shop, then you can be Fallout Dead Space. Fallout Dead Space, huh? Fallout Dead Space will impound your line imadon of imagery, Optimal Prime. But Optimal is also part of Progressive, JPEG, and PNG. So in that way, the select sun of knowing that I myself gonna die anyway. I'm purebred. I'm really purebred, and maybe one day I'll be blind. Small dick, big tits, oh whatever. Doesn't really matter. So anyway, in that way, the Vlogshoton of the motherhood in relation to the mainframe reactor is the key of key. And in that way, if we can conclude the manufacturing degree of the factor, we will selection the two cache. Which one, John? So, thinking of plots, conversion. So, Brendan, yes, and allocation. So in that way, the search engine more designer will be optimized as well in relation to advert and advocate, as well as committee. So in that way, committee will be third-long sieges of Ross House for the defunct, and the defunct, or whatever, what first word, is an acronym of knowing how to guide the dogs. Well, usually we has collect or whatever dogs thingy when we're taking for a walk. Do they help blind people? But they're just normal dogs. So in that way, the shutdown of the relationship to build Sleepless Day, High Low Low is Hitler's mom. But in that way, the dead people, I don't know. I don't remember now. It was just like first it's dead police, now it's dead people. Oh, I'm over it. So in that you know, but he's not that mother. Anyway, so the Lebanon, the rejection of funny face in our own disease. Things we can do, things we cannot do. That's all. So, I'm blind. What did I just eat? Emma-chan. So, tasty bud. Well eaten. Cleaning teeth. Want a drink. Sipping. No more food. Pancake. Oh, I think a rat just came in my house. Oh. Etc. I'm not a doctor or anything. I'm just telling you a story. That's all I am. I'm just telling you a story. That's all.